I wasn't expecting guests. She just turned up. Samadhi. Someone asked, how do you know? No, how does it feel? What does it feel like, samadhi? How do you know when you have reached samadhi? Or how do you know when you've reached deeper levels of absorption, as absorbed meditation, or absorption in your meditation object? How do you know? Well, the short answer is these states of mind are particularly difficult to describe because they're not coming from a place of conventional descriptive language, in that they are absorbed states of mind free from the hindrances of sensual desire, of aversion, of tiredness, lethargy, restlessness and worry, and doubt, free from sensual stimuli such as seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, free from thought processing, arising emotions, and a feeling of infinite spaciousness, emptiness. And of course, emptiness, nothingness, is something that cannot be labelled in a descriptive way. So one could say, what is it like? How does it feel to be in love? How do you know when you're in love? And you'll find there are many books on this subject, as there are on samadhi and meditation, and descriptions and books on the ultimate goal, attainment of nibbana, which is the glimpse of this state of mind whereby none of those aforementioned hindrances are present, and one can experience freedom from suffering, detachment from, the loss of attachment to this physical body and this thinking brain, just simple, pure, conscious awareness of not being, but freedom from those fetters, those ties to our worldly or ordinary worldly existence. So again, a lot of words there with no real conclusive meaning. So it is often broken into steps by way of want to describe something that is ultimately not describable. It's interesting. This is one of the most common questions are about these stages of samadhi and meditation, and many answers and descriptions of it. One can read here online and the different stages. Similarly to that of love. People, not monks, not nuns, obviously, but people, adults in worldly life, in relationships and otherwise, have sexual relations. It's common practice, and it is something, an action, it's something that's done by most, and perhaps more so than the practice of meditation. But people don't try and put into words and describe that activity. Maybe in graphic form, in blatant form, such as, descriptive writings one would term as literal pornography. But to try and describe the actual emotional, because it's very much an emotional and a physical feeling, or linked, is indeed equally very difficult. And people leave that alone and think, well, that's okay. They can experience it for themselves. We don't need to read a book about it. We don't need someone in authority to tell us how it will feel and how it will be when we get there. And will we know we've done it properly or not? I hope I'm not being too lurid, but I'm drawing this analogy because it's quite simply the best example of something we accept as an activity of a very beautiful nature, satisfying nature, fulfilling nature in your lives, in non-celibate people's lives, that doesn't warrant analytical description and discussion and lengthy talks and big long convoluted essays and words all about it. It's taken as something that one can indulge in, engage in, enjoy, and experientially know. This is the same as meditation. We have to experientially know the feelings of samadhi. But saying that, I'll give you a quick and brief description of the process and some more tangible analogies for those of us that don't indulge in other such activities in our lives, or haven't for a very long time, very, very long time. So samadhi, it really means focus. It's usually translated as concentration. It comes in the Noble Eightfold Path as sama sati, sama samadhi, number 8, right at the very end. Because we need to be fulfilling all of the other aspects of the Noble Eightfold Path if we are to stand a hope in attaining to deep levels of absorption we call samadhi. You will also have heard of the word jhana. And jhana, another Pali word, comes from, I thought this cat was going to knock the camera over. We're okay. To mean, we can say it's the higher, deeper, absorbed levels of samadhi. I'll go through them step by step. And if we think of this, we're coming home from a busy day, whether it's been at work or we've been out shopping or we've just been meeting friends socially, and we've returned to where we live. We come into the what is the entrance vestibule, the porch, we call it in English, or the veranda, as I have here. I know when I come back from Pindapata, carrying all of that stuff, the first thing I do is I have a table outside, and I place all of my Pindapata, my bowl, on the table, safely in the middle, at the back. We must never put our Pindapata bowl at the edge where it might fall. And all of the extra food and bags on the table. And there's a sense of relief, of letting go, of putting down. We're literally putting down our baggage. And when you come home, you literally put down your briefcase or your shopping bags and you let go of that weight you've been carrying around with you for some time, up until now. This really is just the first stage of samadhi we call kanika samadhi. Kanika Samadhi in the Pali. But don't worry too much about these names and labels. I've talked in a video of these stages of Samadhi: Kanika Samadhi, Parik Samadhi, Upachara Samadhi and Apana Samadhi, leading to the first jhana, second jhana, third jhana, fourth jhana, and then they're the rupa jhanas, bodily jhanas, followed by 4 arupa, mental, non-bodily, mental jhanas. And I imply, I think, in that talk that you have to reach apana samadhi, deep absorbed levels of concentration, in order to enter the first jhana. But in fact, as is labelled, upachara samadhi is really the first jhana, so the third of 4 stages of samadhi. So there are 4 stages of samadhi. We call in this, we translate them in English, Kanika Samadhi, as momentary concentration or entry. And this is why I liken it to arriving home and putting down your bags. So in meditation, firstly we sit down, we get relaxed and we feel okay. And we take some time, a few minutes, just if it takes longer, it doesn't matter, just to make sure our bodies have time to settle into a place whereby thereafter there's no need to move. This is why we adopt this posture, as I'm in fact sitting in now, of the half lotus, where one can sit without moving anything for a long time and no blood supply is cut off, so there is no numbness, no pins and needles. These things all take practice, everything takes time to develop. I've spoken about that at length in other videos, so you can go back to those, and I'm sure I'll speak of it again. But moving quickly on, once we've settled, we have this feeling of, yes. We've put all our baggage down, we've come into our living space, we've sat. And we start to allow our bodies to settle and relax, and just physically, as we would on any occasion when we've finished a task, sitting down and relaxing, have this sense of, that's relaxing. Now that is in fact Kanika Samadhi. That is the first stage of Samadhi, when we're able to just let our eyes close, no more. There's nothing more to look at, nothing more to do. We've finished for the day. And this is what we have to employ in our meditation. It may be that it's in the middle of our day or at a part of our day when there will be things to do later. So we make a determination to leave the past in the past, everything we've done up to now there, and what we have to do afterwards, the future, in the future, and not let it intrude in this space we're allowing ourselves now to enjoy samadhi, enjoy jhanas, if we like. This is up to us, what we allow our minds to do. So this is Kanika Samadhi. It's coming home, putting everything down. Then we settle and we start to observe, just watch, not focusing concentration or requiring any particular effort, but just to bring our awareness, our consciousness to a meditation object, which I would suggest should be the breath. Anapanasati breath meditation. Anapanasati is mindfulness of the breath, and the name of the sutta, the Anapanasati Sutta, the Buddha teaches us how to observe the breath in some very great detail. It's a very great sutta to read and understand what is meant when we talk so often about breath meditation. It isn't a forced concentration on breathing in, breathing out in a particular way or technique, focusing awareness at the tip of the nose, something like this. No, it's a more broader perception of just breathing, but keeping your attention, your awareness on that subject matter and that activity only. The breath, breathing. As if you might, with the other activity I was describing earlier, have your focus, your attention on just that. Not what you were doing at work in the day, and not what you were going to have to do at work the following day, or before the activity or after the activity, because then of course the activity wouldn't be at all enjoyable or successful. You have to have your mind on the job, so to speak. So we bring our attention to just breathing, just to that. Partly to exclude distraction from all of the other sensory intervention. Even with our eyes closed, there is still seeing. Our ears, we may be in a very quiet and peaceful environment, but there is still hearing. Light we're seeing, sound we're hearing, smells we're smelling, tastes tasting, feeling, touching, temperature, cold, hot, comfortable, uncomfortable, it's all there. The more we bring our awareness onto the breath, the more we are distracted from those distractions, or not allowing those distractions to pull us away from that meditation object, the more slowly we become absorbed into it. This we call preliminary concentration, or parik samadhi, which is means going around the outside. Yes, which is like a perimeter, preliminary concentration. So we're sort of circling in, coming in to the center like this. Not yet fully focused because there's lots of distraction. And this takes time. And this is the second stage of samadhi, as we begin to become absorbed into this activity, this wholesome activity of meditation, of samadhi. We've arrived home, we've begun to settle. The next stage is where the hindrances of seeing, hearing, smelling, the sensual distractions of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting and touching and thinking become less apparent as you become more focused on the meditation object of breathing. But more importantly, or as importantly, the hindrances of sensual desire, so wanting something else, wanting some stimulation of that nature or something to eat or drink or do. Also, the hindrance of aversion, not liking what you're doing. Maybe you're feeling that this isn't what you want to be doing now. You don't feel comfortable. You're too hot. These are the hindrances. Lethargy, the third, tiredness, laziness, sleepiness. Restlessness and worry, thinking about the future, worrying about the past. And doubt, not having a full knowledge of the Buddha's teachings, not so much knowledge, but confidence in the truth that there is suffering. I mean, you might say, how can one not be confident that there is suffering? Of course, it's obvious there is suffering. We can't deny that. But funnily enough, all of these hindrances and all of the things we do are to cover it up, to hide it away, not to expose it, but to push it aside, distract ourselves with entertainment, with sensual pleasures, rather than seeing what it is that's causing us to do that, which is just the desire not to feel what is essentially nothingness or discomfort, something we've chosen not to like, aversion. As we absorb into this meditation object, those feelings of wanting and not wanting go away slowly again with time as you sit in your meditation. And this may not happen all in your first time you sit in meditation. It may take several sessions of this practice before you are able to become absorbed. Now this stage of samadhi, as we're moving into upachara samadhi, can really be compared, they call it access concentration, because you've gone around the outside, centered into the middle, and now you have access to full absorption into your meditation object. This is similar to that we get when we're reading a book or watching a movie that we really are enjoying, and we become thoroughly absorbed into it, engrossed in the activity of the story or the movie we're watching, and really anything that goes on around us doesn't pull us away. Someone may be calling out, your dinner's ready, or someone may be saying, hey, it's time to go here or go there, and you may not even hear that sound because you're absorbed in something that's interesting you, your book you're reading or the movie you're watching or the music you're listening to. This is access concentration, upachara samadhi, where you'll notice, because of that absorption in your book or your movie, by comparison, that isn't in itself meditation, that is reading a book or watching a movie, but by comparison, your absorption, focus on just the activity of breathing, is secluding you from that distraction, those hindrances. And upachara samadhi, this stage of samadhi, is equivalent to what they call the first jhana, where you're secluded from the 5 hindrances. This is why it's the first jhana, which is defined by seclusion from the 5 hindrances. Nothing's going to drag you away from your book or your movie. But here you might say, well, I'm never going to get that interested in the breath, to not be distracted. But that is because you haven't practiced enough. Because what actually happens is, and how you know you're in samadhi, which was really the nature of the, I won't say question, many questions on this subject that I see and are always asked in these kind of forums, in these discussions, is like when you're listening to a piece of music that you really love this piece of music. Maybe it's a piece of music you haven't heard for some time, and then suddenly out of the blue, you hear this piece of music in all its glory. You've got maybe your things in your ears, or you've got your surrounding sound in your home, and your overture or your pop tune, whatever comes on, and wow, you think, wow, I love this song, I love this piece of music. Now, how do you feel? How do you feel when that happens? You feel, oh, it's all a wonderful feeling, isn't it? That heart-lifting exhilaration. And when the chorus comes in, or the favourite part of the tune, the music that you're so familiar with, but you've been away from for a while, you hear it and you just feel so elated. That feeling of joy and bliss. It's both emotional and physical, isn't it? Now that is what we call in the Pali language sukha and piti. Piti and sukha. Piti is joy and happiness. Piti is rapture, physical rapture. Sukha, joy and happiness of mind. So those combined physical feelings and mental emotions that one can compare to listening to your favorite piece of music, you will experience as you go into upachara samadhi, or the first jhana, because you are free from those things hitherto that have hindered you from that purest of feelings coming from emptiness and no distraction, of samadhi. If you forget all the other names, it doesn't matter. Just remember samadhi. It's a third of the Noble Eightfold Path. Sila, moral virtue. You must have that foundation. And then you'll have samadhi. From this samadhi, the wisdom comes easily. You don't have to read books. You don't have to be clever. You don't have to speak many languages. Many people engage in the other activities I said at the beginning of the video, many more than do engage in meditation in the world, as a species, as a race. All of the time, it's going on. The birds do it, the bees do it, even, I can't remember the song, something are doing it. It doesn't require any kind of intelligence, intellectual understanding. It doesn't require, in fact, even a technique. Because it is a case of not doing something, it's a case of letting go. A song, you know, famous song of the 80s, relax, don't do it. You'll know the song. If you don't, it doesn't matter. But what is it saying? It's don't do it. Relax. Don't do it. It's the same. Meditation. Relax. Don't forcibly relax. Allow your body time to settle and relax. Your mind time to settle and become calm. And then you will experience this maybe more subtle at first feeling of joy and happiness and some physical rapture through just purely observation of the action, breathing in and breathing out. Now, with that comparison to music, I must bring it to your attention and remind you that having heard that piece of music and had those wondrous feelings, that if it was to go on and on and on, you would after some time get really fed up of that piece of music. And all of those feelings of joy will just drift away and it will become background sound. It only comes to the foreground again when the track changes and another piece of delightful music you haven't heard for a while comes into the foreground and stimulates you this way. But with meditation, it's not like that. It isn't a conditioned. Samadhi is a result of the causes and conditions you put in place, but in itself, by the very nature of being of emptiness, of nothingness, of not doing it, relax, don't do it, is in itself unconditioned. So it doesn't run out, it doesn't get boring. Of course, it doesn't even cost you any money, it doesn't require any batteries. It's ever present, it's always accessible, even when you can't sit in a meditation environment you might think of, or hall. It can be practically used, even standing in the line waiting for a bus, queuing at the ATM, or in a supermarket shopping place. You can always bring your awareness back to the breath. And unlike a tune, a musical tune that will tire, that feeling is always fresh, invigorating, cooling. This, how are we doing for time, is upachara samadhi, or access concentration, and also described as the first jhana. Now, what I'm talking about has come about from a question: how do I know what it is? How do I know if I've got there? Questions along those lines. I hope this is giving you an indication, is that as to that it is very much experiential. But rather than just saying, well, just go and do it, try it out for yourself, which is actually what the Buddha says, to be experienced by ourselves, for ourselves. I'm trying to give you some idea of the steps and stages you might go through, and something to equate it to not give you a map to follow, but to point out the various signposts along the way. But if you're driving from A to B, you do not need to know all the names of the villages in between. If you're driving from one city to another, you can just follow the direction you're going in and arrive at the city without knowing all of the villages in between. But sometimes you might just look down and say, oh, I've gone through such and such a place, so I'm going in the right direction. It's the only point of this talk. You don't need to remember all of these terms. Aanaa samadhi is when we are so deeply absorbed in the meditation object that nothing will distract us. We will have no sense of physical feeling. Discomfort will have gone. Even the breath will have become subtle in its nature. But you are still aware that you're breathing. This is why I like to look at the whole body of the breath. As we breathe in the air, that's a body of air. And exhale the air, it's a body of air, rather than at one particular point. Because this activity of breathing never stops. So you can always come back to it. Whereas focus on one point can move around, drift about. Someone asked, do I practice the Mahasaya method? No, I don't, and I've only heard a little about it. I practice anapanasati, if I practice anything at all, which is the Buddha's method. It's what the Buddha taught. Now, I know Mahasi Sayadaw teaches Buddhist meditation, but that particular technique of watching the abdomen rising and falling isn't something I think is in the sutras. But it's a way of bringing your awareness to the whole of the breath, but at a point. And then I've spoken recently briefly about that also. I don't know enough about it to give you comparison. All I practice is, as I've taken from the sutras, to be the simplest way to sit and bring my mind to a place whereby it's not going into the future, into the past, and it's undistracted by all that's going on around it. It is focused, absorbed, like in that interesting book or exciting movie, but without the disappointment of the book ending or the movie finishing and then having to search for something else. It's always there, without expectation, without disappointment. It's coming back to a place of a foundation of no need to do it, no need to do anything other than to enjoy what is always there and always has been, but has been covered up. Aanaa samadhi. That's the fourth stage of samadhi. So beginning with kanika samadhi, which is like coming home. Relaxing, letting go. Parikama samadhi, going around the outside, centering in to preliminary concentration, focus on the meditation object. Until you become absorbed in the meditation object, free or secluded from the hindrances and external distraction. As well as mental. The hindrances are mainly mental, internal, mental. But we still describe mental thought in terms of sensual desire and aversion as external in this sense. When we go into the core, into the center of meditation, from parikama samadhi into upachara samadhi, that is all left behind and you're secluded from that distraction in a place of absolute absorption in the one activity of meditation, your meditation object, the breath. Where you experience piti and sukha, physical rapture and mental joy, happiness, which holds you there, but not to become attached to, held on to, because this isn't the end. You're still experiencing, liking the experience of joy, liking the experience of physical rapture, and really the wanting of that never to end. But it will be surpassed, rather than end, by something far better. As you enter into aanaa samadi, the deeply absorbed emptiness, nothingness of what we can only describe as jhanas. Can't really see this time, but I think we should be all right. In this first jhana, you're still experiencing joy and happiness. And the second jhana is much the same. So upachara samadi and aanaa samadi are much the first two rupa jhanas. Only in the third jhana, you will have in the first and second jhana reduced, and in the second jhana eventually stopped discursive thought, stopped thinking, stopped prevaricating, stopped all forms of analysis on what's going on, and just put everything down, let go, and be able to just be absorbed and go with the flow, as much you would with your book or your movie, but you're still experiencing it. In the third jhana, however, as you are still aware and have an absolute feeling of let's say, contentment, satisfaction and joy, you will develop this deep equanimity, unshakability, stoicism, if you like. You will become very firm in your absorption. This is the climax of the book or the movie, where nothing is going to distract you. And everything just drops away, literally feels like it's dropping away. You are dropping away, like going over a bump in the road, into the fourth jhana of emptiness, nothingness, and what is unconditioned and therefore not possible to describe, but can only be experienced by yourself. These aren't steps to follow. The steps to follow are keeping the precepts, the 5 precepts, and then just sitting and doing nothing other than watching your breath and not moving regularly for a long time. That's all you have to do. Sit, doing nothing for a long time. Now, that is easier said than it is done, of course. But with practice, with determination, you will be able to sit and do nothing for a longer and longer and longer time, each time you try. This is how we develop these deep stages of absorption, enjoy these stages of samadhi into the jhanas, and then move on into actually arupa jhanas, which are really only described when you get to texts like the Abhidharma. And ultimately, we shouldn't try to describe these states, because they're not even states of mind. They are where the mind becomes free from all of this. All that I'm talking about. It's letting go of all of that. So when people ask me, what do you practice? What do you do? Well, I don't actually sit down with a technique and start by running through a list of people I would like to share metta with, and then going through all of my body parts and then counting my breaths step by step, because of course I've been meditating for quite a long time, and these are the ways we train ourselves to focus our minds on one thing when we begin. As we become more developed with our practice, as we've been doing it more and more, or doing nothing more and more, we are able to lose the water wings, lose the stabilizers, learning to swim or riding a bicycle analogy, and just sit, watch the breath. Or as I'm walking along, it could be busy, walking across the busy road on my way through from the village into the town and all going on around me, but bringing my awareness back to just the breath gives me again that immediate sense of of calmness, of peace, tranquility of mind, both physical and emotional senses of well-being. So this too is meditation. You're always meditating. But jhana, samadhi, where we can really get away from it all, rejuvenate, really rest the mind and the body, because it is more restorative even than sleep. You know you've been asleep, but whilst you're asleep, you don't know you're asleep. And you know you've meditated or been in samadhi, but whilst you're in samadhi, you do and you can experience samadhi, but in a different way than the perception of experience of sleep or being awake. Fully awake, but with nothing to bother you. Not sensory deprivation, just unaffected, equanimity. Upachara is the Pali word. This is the jhanas. This is absorption. We begin this with the keeping of sila. If you don't keep the 5 precepts, you will not get to these states of absorption in their truest form. People might say, oh, well, I break the 5th precept, it helps me relax, and then I can meditate more easily. Not really. This is a false understanding of samadhi, a false understanding of jhana, if that's based on, because you have to have absolute full mindfulness. Because firstly, you go through recognizing the hindrances for what they are and as their distractions, and you let go of them. You're not covering them up, you're not hiding them. You're not intoxicating the mind so as it doesn't see clearly. You're opening the mind so it sees all these things very clearly in their true nature of suffering, their cause from desire, and then freedom from that suffering's ending through deep absorption in samadhi. And the step-by-step guide is the Noble Eightfold Path, broken into simple steps of just sila, moral virtue, and then you have samadhi resulting from this practice. I've spoken there a little bit about the stages of samadhi and how this leads us into jhana. They overlap halfway. I mean, the third stage of samadhi, upachara samadhi, is really the beginning of the rupa jhanas. It's just words, it's just terminology. You can just think of it as you get home, you put your baggage, your shopping down, you let go. You sit, you relax, you bring your awareness to a meditation object, you become absorbed, and then you are no longer distracted by anything else externally. You're kept there by the joy, pleasure of being absorbed in your meditation object, and all that arises from that. Free and secluded from all other hindrances. This is samadhi. This is the jhanas. When the bell rings or it's time to finish the meditation, you continue, however, able to come back to the breath whenever you want to feel the comfort, the satisfaction, the contentment you had in your formal sitting meditation, but in and throughout all of your daily activities, you're taking it with you. A long-lasting, everlasting, timeless form of joy and happiness, fulfilling and continuing, being unconditioned, and therefore not subject to impermanence, because it isn't of the elements, it isn't even of the thinking consciousness or of the bodily aggregates, khandhas we call in Pali, through contact, seeing, perception, thought, awareness. It can just be known experientially. And just this knowledge experientially is enough to bring yourself back to a center of contentment at all times.